So today I speak to Liam Pingree, the co-founder of Neuronic. This is the company selling red light therapy headsets, and people are having extraordinary results using them. Liam shares his rather interesting journey on how he ended up in the red light therapy space, and also reveals some interesting products and developments that him and his company are working on. Now, before we get into it, I do need to say that none of this information should be seen as medical advice. Also, I am affiliated with Neuronic, so if you do use the discount code or links below, you will save, and I do get a little bit of a commission. Okay, let's go. Okay, so thank you so much, Liam, for taking the time to have a conversation with myself and, of course, all you wonderful viewers. We're actually here at the Biohacking Summit in Amsterdam. I've got a few questions for you personally. I want to know a little bit more about your backstory, the company, and also some exciting things you're working on. But I'm also going to throw in a couple of technical questions. Perfect. If you don't mind, I hope you're ready for all this.
Yep, let's do it.
Let's go into it. So first up, what's your personal backstory? How did you end up here in red light therapy, like in the red light therapy space?
So I guess it's a different journey than most people in the space. A lot of people are from a medical or wellness kind of background. I actually studied finance and did international business.
Wow.
I worked in numerous startups actually, from companies in Luxembourg. I worked in America, a lot of the jobs remote, and then an off-grid solar company in Rwanda, pricing financial models. With all this, I was kind of always interested in the startup space, seeing how teams function, how small groups can make things happen very quickly and adapt, as opposed to larger companies. So after studying, I moved to New York. I was pricing financial derivatives on the HSBC trading floor. And it was around the time that COVID happened, 8 months into it, that we couldn't work from home because the information was so sensitive. I had written down in my notebook full of ideas of different startups that I wanted to try. Tried many and failed before. And I had the idea for this near-infrared light bucket.
Right.
The idea actually came many years ago while I was studying, but when I seen this video on Facebook.
Yes.
And the video was of a guy called Max Weber. Some people may have heard of him, especially your audience in Australia.
Yes.
But he essentially had a Facebook video, and it was done by ABC News.
Yes.
And in the video is Max put a bucket on his head that he'd wash the car with. It's a strip of near-infrared lights.
Right. Yes.
Stapled a strap under his chin.
Yes.
And the backstory is he had seen it on mice, something working. So he went to his clinician. The clinician said, this won't be available for another 10 or so years. And he says, well, I'm going to do it myself. So he created this bucket. And in the video, it reports Max's symptoms. He had Parkinson's, by the way. 9 out of 10 symptoms improve. Max is playing the piano again. And I thought, this is crazy.
Yeah.
The first time I'd heard of light therapy. And I was thinking, if this actually works, let's have a look at some of the research on it. And secondly, let's make a product that's actually refined, that we can make accessible to everyone.
Not a bucket with some lights in it.
Exactly. So I think the original idea was this NIR helmet bucket thing, and that's how we mentioned it in the PowerPoint when we kind of had the idea to start this. So come back to the time of COVID, I was sitting at home looking at the notebook, and I had studied abroad in Minnesota with Marvin Schoner, the other co-founder of Neuronic.
Yes.
And we had always bounced ideas. He was very entrepreneurial as well. We had very similar values and ethics.
Yeah.
So it was a natural kind of phone call when I said, hey, do you want to start this together? Meanwhile, he was in another startup working as a co-founder there, and had just raised $1 million for that company.
Wow.
So he had a decision to make. But I sent him the same video. And with that video, he had the same idea that, hey, we need to do something about this, because since I saw the video at the start to when I looked at it again, the amount of research on red light therapy had just blown up, and especially on the brain.
Yeah.
So that's where like, we can do something about this.
But you and Marvin aren't just two entrepreneurs with a goal. I mean, you've got some medical team, you got some medical gurus, if you want to use that word, working with you, even your co-founder, right?
Yeah,
Dr. Berman. He's a co-founder?
Yeah, he's one of the co-founders of the team, and we met him. So the company kind of started with me and Marvin thinking about how we'd commercialize this and how we'd make it as a product, looking at patents out there.
Yeah.
And it was about 6 to 8 months in on that journey when we were thinking, hey, we need someone with the credibility who had been working on this for like 15 plus years to come in and teach us more about the light therapy space, because we don't know enough about it. We still don't know everything. And it's continuous learning. If everyone had the answers, it would already be FDA approved. So basically, I sent Marvin a message, Dr. Berman, a message on LinkedIn, and I said, hey, I'm looking to learn a bit more on light therapy.
Yeah.
I'd love to pick your brain because I've seen your research papers. And he wrote back and he said, yes, I charge $250 an hour or $2,500 for a day. And I was obviously still working at the time, and this was a side project where we didn't have any money. So I wrote back, I'll consult my business partner. Meanwhile, this is the device we're going to sell. And when you seen the picture of it, it was the same company he was kind of working with to work with his patients.
So what do you mean same company? And
so the same manufacturer that we were going to work with.
Yeah.
So he's like, okay, here's my number. Just call me.
We'll do it. Yeah.
So I called him, I dialed the phone, and we had a conversation. I think it was over an hour long. And by the time it was finished, it was pretty much agreed, hey, we're going to do this, because I convinced him, me and Marvin had the skills and the know-how to build a team, to build a company, and to scale this so we can actually make it more accessible. I don't know if you know, but we put 100% of the profits back into research and development. So that's research, that's trials, that's our own findings, and it's also product development. And that can be increased in the device in its different functionality, but it can also refine it to make sure it's operating more efficiently.
So I want to ask, I want to dive more into the products that you have and also what you're working on soon, but let's just keep focusing on the company itself. So you have the two Marvins and yourself, but I know now that team's grown exponentially.
Right.
Who's on board now? Like, do you have more researchers, medical experts in there?
We have a research coordinator, and she's basically involved in all the planning of the research. So she'll be helping write different SOPs and different trial outlines, working with other universities and doctors.
Oh, wow.
So we kind of organize it in-house, but we don't have, say, the PhD students or people in the team that are writing all these things. So we kind of outsource a lot of that.
I'm with you.
And we work with the different universities and people to do it. For example, the one that was done by Bob Bowen and Praveen Arani, that was done when Bob actually purchased the devices, used them in his clinic, and he was using the Thor laser bed as well.
Yes, right.
And that study was done with them, and through Marvin Berman, he gave recommendations on the protocols, on the usage, and how to kind of use the device to work in the study. So we kind of advise on it. We don't necessarily conduct all the research. We are working though to do a trial, but I know you want to talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, we can talk about it now.
So we're working right now to do a small trial. I think it's about 40 patients.
Yes.
And that would be on early onset dementia.
Nice.
And that would be using different protocols to see what works most effectively. And it would be like a pre-trial before we want to work with the FDA, for a pre-submission.
So when you say different protocols, is that it's using your product, the Neuradiant 1070? That's the only product you have at present time. Okay, so it's using that, but different protocols, as in like one person's using it 3 times a day, the other one's using it once a day. Like, what exactly do you mean? Or is it different wavelengths? Do you have different versions that you're buying the same?
Great question. So typically when it's a condition, people will go and get a QEEG, 19-channel QEEG, which is a brain map.
Yes.
There's 19 diodes on the head, and what it tells you, it gives you this map of different states of the brain, and you can see optimal would be green, and then you have blue and red on it as well. And in layman's terms, the blue is under-optimized and the red is overstimulated.
Yes.
Right? So we can read that map, and based on that, we make individual protocols, because maybe you need to focus more on the right, the left, the front, or the back. And we also pulse the light. We can have it continuous wave, which was used in the Bob Bowen study.
Yes.
But the pulsing is bringing in that element of brain entrainment.
Right, okay.
And that's why it gets very individualized.
Yes.
And we're trying to work out the best protocols, because we can't just say, everyone do 16 hertz of pulse and light, and that's going to work for the entire population. It's not like that, unfortunately.
Let's just talk about the products briefly, because I know you have 2 versions of that Neuradiant 1070. You've got your base model, and then the Plus, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Explain the differences between the 2 of them, because I know I often get asked, and now that I'm trying to explain it, I'm like, I'm still confused.
Yeah, so the easiest way to explain it is it's the exact same product.
Yes.
But one's a bundle. One's standalone.
Yes.
So with the standalone 1070, you're just getting the device.
Yes.
There's 4 preset protocols on it, and you can play around with the custom settings. I say play around, you can adjust the time, intensity, and frequency. And then with the Plus, you get access, which is a 4-digit code to an unlockable feature, which allows you to put, the front on, the back, the left, and the right.
The different quadrants.
Exactly, the 4 different quadrants at a certain pulse at a certain time. And you can do it in steps as well. So you could do 10 hertz here.
Yes.
And then after that minute, you could do the back for 20 hertz.
Okay.
I'm not suggesting you do that, just that's what it allows you to be that customizable.
Is that the only difference?
And then you also get 3 months consultation.
Right. So that consultation, you'll be provided guidance on how to use those advanced features.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because the general public won't know how to use that.
Of course.
If they're not on your feedback professional.
Yeah. Okay, got it. So pretty much if you want the hand holding, you want the support, the advice, then the plus is where it's at. What about the scans? Let's say someone just buys the base unit.
Yeah.
And then they go out and get a QEEG scan. Can they then use that in any way, or really, if you want the guidance, you need to go?
It probably is best to get the consultation.
Okay.
Because typically, if people want to have that individualized protocol, it takes time to assess the EEG.
Yes.
We ask other questions, and then we need to spend time working with them. And it's not only you set it up once and they're good to go. With photobiomodulation or light therapy, there's that biphasic dose response.
Yes.
There's too much and there's too little, and then there's that sweet spot.
And I suppose, are you then doing follow-up scans like every month, or
not every month? Because it would be great to do it every month, but there's a cost involved, and people typically don't do it. So we find we get a lot more scans when people start.
Yes.
But asking them to do the follow-up after 3 months is typically harder, because they feel the benefits themselves.
Right.
They don't need to prove it to themselves that they're feeling better.
But if they were to get a scan 6 weeks in, and they were on the plus package, they would send it to your team, and then that would change the protocols.
It may change the protocols, yeah. So we have like a before and after scan on our website that shows, someone going along that journey, and you can see the areas of deficiency, both either overstimulation or under, actually turning back to green.
Yes.
So it's clearing up a lot, and that would suggest then, the improvements.
Okay, so I'm curious then, have you had someone who has been doing multiple scans, and after say 6 months, you're getting a nice balanced brain state? And if so, what do you then recommend to that person? That they just stop using it, or like?
Great question. I think we definitely need to keep understanding how long the effects last. It depends on the condition as well. So just to clarify, it's not a medical device, but a lot of people actually buy the device when they read up all the research, not even done by us, but across the board in the industry. They're putting one and one together and realizing this may actually help them. We see results usually after a couple of months. Sometimes it's sooner, sometimes it's longer. For the Bob Bowen study, it was after a month, and they were using it 3 times a day. Now, that was with long COVID. So it'd be interesting to see in a follow-up, which we'll do soon, how are the people that were in that state feeling? Because is brain fog a thing that comes back routinely? We're not sure. Or if it's now cleared, is that it, and they don't need to wear the device anymore? Because it's quite different. Where if you have a neurodegeneration, so you are suffering with memory loss or Alzheimer's, it's quite likely you're going to need this for the rest of your life. Because while we're giving more energy back to the brain and we're trying to rewire it, it's not always sure that your energy levels are going to stay up that high. I mean, it does drop off over time with light therapy. That's why you'd have to consistently use it.
Okay, so what have you seen other than these published studies and the more medical research studies that have happened? What have you seen from just average Joe customers? I mean, people.
So I've used it myself. Okay, let's example.
I mean, if you don't mind me asking, do you have any underlying brain disorders or anything like that?
Not that I know of. It's possible.
Okay. No, so great. So what have you noticed?
So when I tried the device and I was using it myself, I was feeling a slight sensation, but I don't know if that was like a placebo effect or not. I've tried it when I used it in the mornings, that I'd have like a sustained energy. But there's has been days where, even I haven't had that effect, because there's other factors that come into play, like sleeping, your diet, etc. So it's hard to kind of judge that. But one day I did actually have like brain fog. Do you know when you can't focus? You just cannot think. And I said, let me try the helmet today. And this is a good few months ago. And I put the helmet on, And sure enough, after one of the preset protocols, honestly, it had changed and it had lifted. And that to me was a moment when I actually felt the effects firsthand, because we had so many testimonials and people coming in saying, hey, you know, my son with autism, he isn't acting out as much anymore. Like, this is really helping.
Yeah.
Or we've had people with Parkinson's saying their tremors have slightly decreased. And we have people saying her personality is back.
Really?
I mean, we have one young girl who got it recently. And she's from Ireland, actually. She's my partner's friend. And she's been using it and found that her personality's come back. Her parents are like, you know, nearly crying on the phone.
Wow.
That the difference. She had Lyme disease. So it's actually affected her memory.
I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Randy Beck, but I recently did an interview with him. Now, a quick backstory. My son is working with him as a neurotherapist. He uses a lot of QEEG scans. We're doing one a month, for instance. It's expensive, but, you know, when it's your child's health, you spend the money. And he uses photobiomodulation, but he comes in just treating those depressed areas, you know, those underactive areas, to bring them up. He's working with some rather sick individuals in terms of brain disorders, right? Now, when I spoke to him, he was nervous about recommending photobiomodulation on the brain without doing a scan beforehand, just in case you're actually overstimulating the part of the brain and potentially doing more harm. Now, a lot of people ask me about this. I'm no expert, but I'm curious. Do you have any thoughts on that? Is it something that you've seen, that someone's used this product and then all of a sudden said, hey, look, I'm actually having more seizures, or memory's got worse? Like, is it an area that in an ideal world, everyone would do that scan? I know there's like 3 questions just there. So
so I'm not a medical expert either, but I can give you my opinion. And I can tell you what, you know, we found with it. So if someone has a condition, it's always recommended to get a scan, because then you can address the issue more directly. You know more about it. It's like trying to solve a problem without knowing what the problem is. You can't really go about it.
Yes.
But if it's for general wellness, obviously there's going to be benefits to it, because on the biological level, we're just giving more energy to the brain, where you're, you know, through the reaction process you are.
Yes.
In regards to making things worse in seizures, we haven't seen anything like that.
Yeah.
And then it would also depend on, are you pulsing the light? Because when you think about red light therapy or photobiomodulation, 2 things are usually happening in the industry. Not everyone's using continuous wave.
Yes, yes.
If you use continuous wave, you're essentially just giving photons to the brain, right? If you're going to be doing pulsing, then you're addressing the brain waves, and it's an element of brain entrainment.
Yes.
So when you think of, you know, binaural beats and it's 40 hertz, it's white noise or brown noise, whatever it may be, that's the brain entrainment.
So you've never had anyone say, hey, is my device actually working because I'm feeling worse, for instance? I mean,
So typically, if people use the device over a period of time, so maybe they do like 3 10-minute sessions, then they're probably going into that overstimulation side.
Okay.
And what we've noticed as well, more so Mary Berman has noticed, because he was working with 810 devices before we launched the 1070, through his foundation, that the time people have needed to be using the device actually decreased, because they were they were feeling the effects quicker. And he noticed that quite early on. You know, some people were getting that effect of overstimulation, which could be a little bit like too much tiredness. Sometimes it's a slight headache.
Right, slight headache, yeah.
So,
do you in an ideal world then, do you think your device, rather than just having your 4 quadrants, 4 different areas that you can control, would have 8, 16, 20? You know, so you could even go more targeted?
Yeah.
Like, is that the dream? Is that the goal?
Yeah, so I think we're working towards that. And I will say that next year we hope to release another product.
Yeah.
Everything we do is try to be focused on the brain and neuronic.
Yes.
So we do hope to do that, and we're putting a lot of effort into research and development. So that's the research to find out the best protocols, how it's being used, and then it's also the product development side as well.
All right, so why don't we talk about that? Is there anything you can share about upcoming products? You know, any interesting developments?
So I can say that we are working on them. I don't want to give too many details away yet. I'm sure we'll talk again, and we'll send you the product to review for sure. They're always good reviews. I think you do it very honestly. But that won't be until next year.
Okay.
What we have added to the portfolio at the moment is we partnered with Benny Light.
This.
So they have a pad. It's actually a premium one because it's leather on the back. It's very flexible. It's tested over 200,000 times going back and forth. So it's very durable.
Who did that?
That was done in Korea by Sung Kyu, who's actually the CTO there.
But it's not some person literally testing.
No. It's not some person.
I'd be like, who personally did that? It's like find some after school worker.
It was rigged up on a machine.
Right, of course.
You know, that was being pulled over and back, and it was just done and left going for so many amounts.
I seriously thought there was some kid.
No one's going there. And
there's 100.
Counting to 200,000, I think would be a challenge in itself.
So that product, the Benny Light, is that out at the moment? I've mentioned that before in a video actually, and
it has been out for quite a while, and it has been sold.
Yeah.
So Neuronic is partnered with them,
right?
To do sales in the US and Canada.
Got it.
So we're not actually the main company behind it, but we are trying to commercialize it for them in the US and Canada. So we've developed that partnership there.
Yeah.
So Benny Light has its own website, bennylight.com. You can find the product there.
Yes.
And the current price for it is $950.
Okay.
I believe there'll be another 2 pads come into the collection, which will be smaller. This one's actually probably about this size. And it can go around your torso, it can go around your back.
Yeah.
And it can go on a stand actually around your neck as well. So.
Okay, so let's go back to the reviews. So yes, I've reviewed, I did a first impressions look of your, I want to call it a helmet. What's you refer to it as? A headset?
I don't like to use helmet because it's what people associate, like, you know, bike helmet or like protection. Like helmet by definition is like a protective device for your head.
But it looks like a helmet.
But everyone calls it that, so I think we need to just listen to everyone and start calling it a helmet.
Well, I did a first impressions. I'll put a link to it. You can check that out. I need to ask then. So I have a spectrometer. It only goes up to 1050 nanometer light. I saw a peak around, I can't remember exactly, 1050-ish. I know your website states that it's a peak of, well, I can't remember the exact terms, but it has a range in there. What was going on there? The product is obviously called the 1070.
Yep.
Based on your knowledge, is the peak at 1070 or is it more towards the 1050 and does it matter?
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think the trouble is the meters at the moment for reading it, at least the lesser expensive ones, actually don't have the range to go up that high. However, the peak actually, I think, is a little lower than 1070. We went for the 1070 and the 1070 name because of the research that came out on it.
Right.
But on the website, it says 1070 plus minus 50 nanometers, because then we're in the safe zone, because it still needs to be, you know, completely verified, and the range actually does fluctuate.
So the results you're getting now are with this device that is potentially putting out more 1050, 1060 than say.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have plans to change that in future editions, or because it's working?
We're continuously testing it. And like you said, it is working. We're getting really positive reviews.
Yeah.
So if we try increase that by a little bit, will it matter?
Yeah.
Will it be even better? That's something we need to find out. According to the research, I mean, that's the optimal. So we obviously want to target that and we want to use it. However, why try fix something that isn't broken?
Totally.
So we're looking at it and we're trying to come up with the best solution. Right now, we're still okay because we're having great results with it. You know, we've always sold it as 1070 as the name of the device.
Yeah.
On the website, it's always been listed 1070 plus or minus 50.
Yes.
So it's still true information.
Yeah, it's interesting because just even if there's some research saying, you know, 805 is good for sports recovery or whatever it may be, it doesn't mean that 830 isn't or 870 isn't as well. You know, in fact, those other wavelengths may in fact be better than the 805 or 810. It's just that that's all the information we have at that time. So you may actually find that, yeah, like, hey, you might find after a couple of years and some research may come out that 1050 is actually the optimal window anyway. Like, it will be interesting. And I guess that's a benefit with using LEDs, where you do get a wider range of light.
Yeah.
2 questions here then. LEDs versus lasers. I know a lot of these brain devices and photobiomodulation are using lasers. I guess they're more the targeted devices. Why did you go with LEDs over lasers?
So lasers, typically you have to apply it in a clinic because someone's navigating where the laser is. And the reason for that, I believe, my knowledge of lasers isn't isn't huge, but is because the light is collimated and it can actually heat up the tissue.
Yes, right.
So by nature, it would penetrate further, but also heat up the tissue, which could be negative effect. So with LEDs, it's a lot safer. It's non-significant risk.
If though the LED was quite powerful, you could still have that same problem. But your LEDs aren't at the intensity of a high-powered laser, I guess, right?
For sure.
Yeah. And I suppose cost is another factor as well, right?
Yeah, there's a difference in cost as well. Like LEDs are generally cheaper.
All right, so let's explore power a bit more then. With your future products, is this something that you're looking at increasing the power output? What do you think you found a sweet spot at the moment?
I think at the moment it's a pretty sweet spot. I think that, extending the areas of where we can cover would be of additional benefit. So that might require like a few more LEDs. Right now, I think we use 256. So if it goes up to, 290 or 300, I don't see any harm in that. And it'd be more beneficial if it's targeting other areas.
So you'd keep the same LEDs, you just put more of them rather than increasing the intensity of the LEDs. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Have you explored like upping the power irradiance and decreasing treatment times? Have you looked into that?
That's an interesting one. Not too much. I don't think we've looked into that so much at the moment. And also we've found what we have to be working.
Right.
So I think even James Carroll said it in his interview about, when you're cooking, you don't want to cook something on the highest heat and, it doesn't taste as good.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, half an hour at 180 degrees, perfect for your cookies, but you don't want to go 5 minutes at 1,000 degrees, right?
Yeah.
But it's still an interesting question because I don't know. It's I think it's a loaded question. There's a lot to unpack there.
Research has to stay being produced. We're trying to do that. We're at an early stage. We're still a startup technically. We've grown the team from 3 co-founders in September last year that went full-time to now a team of over 20.
Wow.
So it's grown pretty quick. We're covering a lot of different bases. But in the next few years, we hope to have like a lot more answers where we can say, here's the research, here's exactly what we know.
Yeah.
Everyone can read the exact paper and it's shared like that.
Yeah, that'll be cool. And I think like if it gets to a point where you have more of those options in terms of like, all right, hit this spot and this spot, based on your scans, that'd be really cool. And it would be really nice if those scans were a lot more cheaper, accessible. That would be amazing because it's just like when you're taking your vitamin D supplements, right? Like you can go out and do a vitamin D test. Oh, actually, I don't need it, right? But otherwise you're flying blind. But like you were saying earlier, the cool thing is it seems that everyone that's using your products, or most people are using your products, even if they don't have a serious disorder, and noticing some benefit. It's funny because I want to do a review with your product, like a long-term review, but I hate doing reviews where it's subjective. Like it's why I don't like reviewing supplements, for instance. Oh, I feel better. I will my stomach's better, or my gut health is better. Really, I need to quantify it. And it's the same with your headset device. So I know I could do the QEEG scans, but I also know that I do a lot of red light therapy and I'm always playing with other stuff. So I probably are the best person to do it, but I should find someone, who's new to it all and say, all right, do a scan. Maybe that's a better way to do it. And it's why I haven't done a review on your, like a long-term review.
I do need to keep things consistent, that they're not changing other factors as well. Yeah. We did actually a report with Neurocatch using their device.
Yes.
And we published a small case study. It wasn't accredited by anyone or joint, the university study, but it was just a little summary of the experience that a person had when they used the Neurocatch, and then they used the device after and then put the Neurocatch on again.
Yeah.
And it showed, the cognitive processing speed increasing, which was really nice to see because he was just a healthy individual.
Do you have any athletes that are using it for athletic performance?
We do. I can't name them yet because we haven't kind of announced it, but we have an NFL player.
Oh, wow.
We have an Olympian surfer. We have a UFC fighter.
Really?
So we have several people using it in high kind of profiles, but it's up to them if they want to share this information. They're using it for themselves.
That's cool.
Whether they want to share that to the rest of the world, we will promote that until they're in agreement that they're happy to do this.
How are they using it though? Is it okay, like the surfer's going out to try and practice some new tricks today, or maybe they're in the gymnasium, you know, in a foam pit trying some flips, and so they're using it before they do that, or is it a recovery tool, or is it just a day-to-day well-being tool?
Yeah, so you know, there's definitely going to be no images of the surfer wearing it while he's out on the waves.
But do you know what I mean? Like, is it 100%? Is it like a pre-workout to before? You know, you take your creatine and your caffeine before a big lift.
For this guy, he's retired, and actually with surfing, you actually experience a lot of TBI, like a lot of concussions.
Yeah, okay.
And it does actual huge damage to your brain when you get into that level. You're surfing the really big waves.
So it's more the recovery, preventive.
It's complete recovery in this case. Yeah,
because I know some people have talked about using it when they're learning new skills or a new language. But I recently, I can't remember who it was. I recently spoke to someone who was using it before a heavy lift, like very little skill involved, assuming you've trained it, you know.
Yeah.
And they believed they were seeing benefits from it. So anyway, that's something I just thought I'd ask. So where do you see your company and even the industry as a whole, where do you see that going in the future?
Industry as a whole, I think, is an exciting time. I think it's crazy. The amount of different products we're seeing come to market, the amount of different people. We're seeing bigger companies get involved, whether that's investment. We're seeing market reports on the light therapy industry. I read a report only last week saying about the 250 million that's going to be added in the next couple of years.
Wow.
You know, so the market is already supposed to be over $1 billion.
Wow.
If we're looking exactly at what we're doing, it's probably even larger because we're in the neurotech field. So we do light therapy, and then we also do the brain entrainment, and we're working on product devices. So we talked about what we're releasing next year, but in years to come, we'll also have a device that can not only we manually read the EEG, but it's embedded in the device.
Really?
Using an algorithm that can actually
real time.
Exactly.
That's cool.
So we're working on those advancements, and we're really excited about the space. We have a lot of news coming next year, a lot of updates. We'll continue going to events. We'll probably go to the team a lot more, and we'll have hopefully our large study started at that stage. So we'll be working towards getting the medical device with the FDA, which I think is really the biggest milestone.
Yes, yeah, that'll be huge. Though that real-time EEG scanning plus altering the light, I mean, that could open up a whole new world.
It's kind of personalizing it. It's you know, we keep going on about how each brain is personalized. Why not make the protocols like that?
But it also, imagine how fast you could get those results. And I think of this from personal experience with my son. We're doing monthly QEEG scans. We're doing about 30 odd sessions each month between each scan.
Yeah.
And we can't start the next treatment protocol until we've done that scan, right? To know what we're working with. But imagine if you're doing all of that almost real time, and then you go away and rest and recover for a few days, and you hit it again. I mean, it's pretty exciting. I mean, for people with brain disorders, you know, like, could be huge. So exciting times. Thank you very much for your time today. And where can people find more about your company and even yourself?
Thank you. Neuronic.online is our website. I think that's the best place to go. It's the place we have all the information. There's a lot of pages on it, a lot of information. And you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm quite active there. And that's it.
Cool. And I'll put all those links to your site and your LinkedIn and everything else we've mentioned all down below. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool. And that is a wrap. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Liam. If you do have any questions for myself or Liam, please leave them below. I'll also put links to all the products and resources mentioned in this video. Otherwise, click up here to see a playlist with all my recent red light therapy interviews.